If you enjoyed Deadpool and Wolverine, congratulations, because you're either a terminal man-child who's so deep into collectibles that they all have smears of your dick cheese on them, or have taken a few hockey pucks to the dome, as this wasn't even a film. It was a whole lot of nostalgia bait with a script built solely off of who Disney could afford for a Dancing with the Stars level cameo and a lot of humor that sounds like this.
Vagina!
Vex, it's a Deadpool film. What did you expect? Just have fun with it. It's not supposed to be serious.
Disgraceful.
If that's your defense for this film, you're doing yourself a disservice as a paying customer and to the decades of great comic book films we've gotten that managed to honor a long-standing fan base while also exploring intimate relationships and the deeper darknesses of society. Just because they jangled enough keys to give you a nerd-rection doesn't mean it's a good movie and certainly doesn't mean you should abandon your standards, especially given the state that superhero movies have been in the last several years.
Kill Martha!
What does that mean? Why did you say that name?
Now, I do feel it's necessary to lay out the basic plot premise of Deadpool and Wolverine before I can calmly explain to you why this movie sucks more balls than Ryan Reynolds did to get his $200 million budget. You've been fairly warned, spoilers ahead. Upon acquiring Cable's Time Watch from the last film and reversing the events of Deadpool 2, Wade finds himself in an alternate Earth 10,005. In this timeline, while life is unexciting, it gives him a chance to be around the people he loves. Most importantly, Vanessa, who's alive here but no longer romantically involved with Wade. However, these time-correcting antics aren't completely ignored as the Time Variance Authority, aka the TVA, find Wade and tell him that his original timeline, Earth 10,005, is disintegrating slowly, thanks to the death of the Wolverine back in 2016's Logan, who had acted as an anchor being, meaning they're a being that singularly kept a universe from crumbling based on their existence. Despite all logic, Wade says, screw it, I'm gonna find another Logan to replace the one that died to keep my original timeline from dying. Wade finds another Logan thankfully, but apparently this is the worst one. A Wolverine who just drinks his days away to try and forget the atrocities he had committed. Fed up with the theatrics paradox of the TVA banishes Wade and Logan to the Void, a place at the end of time containing the remnants of alternate universes that had been pruned by the TVA. Here they encounter Cassandra Nova, Charles Xavier's aborted twin, who was banished there to keep the other timelines thriving. With some cameos, the two decide to confront Cassandra, but things go sideways when Logan instead wants to persuade Cassandra to help them get back to their timeline. She manifests a time ring from Doctor Strange and transports them back. Upon arriving on Earth 10,005, Wade and Logan find that Paradox is using a Time Ripper, a device developed to mercy kill timelines as opposed to letting them slowly fade, because he would be bored waiting for them to die otherwise. Seriously. And he plans to use this on Wade's timeline regardless of the permission he might get from his superiors. Cassandra quickly learns this and attempts to take control of the Time Ripper to destroy all timelines, as revenge for Paradox trying to kill her. Somehow, with a confusing exposition dump, Wade and Logan use their bodies as conductors to basically short-circuit the Time Ripper, which conveniently destroys not just the machine, but Cassandra as well. If this plot sounds convoluted, it's because it is. Deadpool and Wolverine spends too much time focusing on details that don't matter instead of pulling together a plot that actually establishes stakes. Deadpool 1 and 2, despite having very simplistic plots, understood its audience and thus what direction the films needed to go in order to resonate with them. Deadpool 1 introduced us to Wade Wilson and his transition into Deadpool. He meets the love of his life, Vanessa, and despite having a pretty terrible life otherwise, he finds something worth living for, sacrificing everything he has left to make her happy. Deadpool 2 evolves their relationship. Now, years later, they're ready to have children until her life is cut abruptly short. How fatherhood shapes men becomes the overarching theme, with Wade being left on Earth to act as guidance for a wayward child, Russell, and Cable traveling back in time to save his dead daughter. In both films, the themes of love and fatherhood resonate with the traditional male role, and it's why, paired with a lot of crude humor and gay jokes, they were so successful. Deadpool and Wolverine attempts to instill a next step with legacy, having Wade find use for his powers to win back Vanessa, a relationship development that's never adequately clarified, and Variant Wolverine desperately trying to change after he went on a bloodthirsty killing spree that resulted in the deaths of many innocent civilians, a character point in this movie that's severely glossed over. The only problem is that unlike the first two films, there's no stake established. In the first film, it was getting a hold of Ajax in hopes of curing Wade's avocado complexion so that he could be with Vanessa again, and the second is to stop the rise of a powerful villain. Here, it's to stop a guy who doesn't want to spend his life watching a universe die out because it would be boring, and that ties into legacy in the most original plotline to ever grace comic book movies. It means Wade Wilson gets to save a universe.
Do I detect a note of sarcasm?
Are you kidding me? This baby is off the charts.
I know, it's amazing, right? So absolutely original, it's exactly what the genre needed. And it's not improved anymore by the inclusion of Cassandra Nova, who goes from being a hell-bent ruler of the Void to wanting to destroy other timelines because someone tried to kill her. A plot turning point that makes even less sense when the film consistently built her up as a formidable villain, only to have her get toasted by a time machine. As a result, the lack of a legitimate villain leaves the film in limbo, with the plot just carrying on as, and then this happened, and this happened, as opposed to gradually building up all of the components of the narrative to build stakes. Instead, we're given a lot of action sequences that honestly lead us nowhere. Oh, the two get stuck in the void and want to fight? Cool, I guess, but these are two immortal beings. So what's the point when you're not really using this to establish any sort of stakes or develop either character further? You've filled screen time, and that's about it. While there's a whole lot of slashing and stabbing and shooting here, the blood appears in one moment and disappears the next within the same scene. Deadpool and Wolverine suits are near immaculate for every fight sequence, save for the one with all of the variant Deadpools, which you can also see in a lot of the promo images. The best part of the entire movie was probably the opening title sequence set to NSYNC's Bye Bye Bye, and even then, it highlights not only exactly what I just mentioned with the blood splatter, but establishes the main antagonist as wholly incompetent for the sake of Disney attempting to tie this into the larger Marvel Cinematic Universe. The TVA has been watching Wade for years, yet they send regular guys with disappearing wands after him? Wands that they still haven't figured out would be great to harness into, I don't know, bullets to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. It's even more lessened when you learn that the lead up to that opening sequence has Paradox giving Wade a minted suit and adamantium weapons before explaining that he's going to destroy Wade's original timeline. Man, what greatly pointless scenes to inflate the runtime, eh? Since the violence goes nowhere, Deadpool and Wolverine shifts to creating stakes with cameos of previous Marvel characters that had films under Fox, cause if the Disney budget Fox sucks jokes weren't enough, they think that shoving in the only characters they could afford to get back would do something for the plot. But Vex, it's a love letter. We've got vastly different versions of what a love letter is. Because this is about the equivalent of telling your wife you got her a 20-person bukkake for your wedding anniversary. You honestly can't tell me that they didn't make a straight mockery of Logan's ending for the sake of a comedic opening title sequence. Come on. Or that this movie takes place in 2024 as indicated by the time cards, but Logan takes place in 2029, and when they return back to their main timeline in 2024, that means there's two Logans now in that universe since the Logan variant doesn't go back to his. Deadpool and Wolverine doesn't pay legitimate tribute to any of the characters they bring back. They all act like Wade Wilson and reflect the overarching theme of one's quest for legacy, even if it's to the detriment of what that character had left behind before. The most egregious example of this is with Blade, who wasn't dropped like every other Marvel IP. He got a full trilogy and a TV series, and currently is in a weird gray area for a reboot. Following his film appearances alone, he did have a legacy and left one, as was clearly alluded to in the final scene of 2004's Blade Trinity. So to rewrite a character to fit the motivations of your leads and the overarching movie isn't honoring anything. It's lazy and shows that the 5 people who have an attributed writing credit to this film didn't know what they were doing, and more so, shows that chunks of this script were solely dependent on who they could wrangle in for a cameo. Genuinely, swap out any of these characters and no difference is made, as they contributed nothing to the plot and died in a place that was at the end of time anyways. The timeline semantics are just as hard to grasp as a decent script in Deadpool and Wolverine. Since Wade has gone back in time to reverse the events of Deadpool 2, he's now living in an alternate timeline where some of his friends are. Again, dependent on who could make a cameo or didn't get accused of essaying people. The timeline stuff took me forever to actually figure out, and it even stumped a panel over on Film Comics Explained the other day. The Fox movies take place on Earth 10,005. The MCU, as confirmed by the Doctor Strange movies and Into the Spider-Verse, take place on Earth 616, also known as the Sacred Timeline. By reversing the events of Deadpool 2, Wade has created an alternate Earth 10,005, which for the sake of confusion we'll call Earth C. In the opening, Wade travels to 616 to join the Avengers. Does this mean that Wade was just timeline hopping after he saved his own? How would he have learned of the Avengers or 616 so quickly, especially given that he says just trying to find the right Wolverine throughout the movie took him 20 years? It raises even more question when we learned that Cable's watch had limited use in the last movie, so how much did he actually get out of it? And on top of that, Logan takes place in 2029, but Deadpool and Wolverine takes place in 2024, where Logan is already dead.
2, 3, 4.
So this brings us to Paradox and his grand plan to use a machine to end it all faster, which honestly doesn't sound completely inefficient, so why wouldn't the TVA be on board with this instead of him having to do it off the books? We can't claim morality, as Paradox is given instructions to bring Wade out of one timeline to the Sacred Timeline, which would imply messing up all the timelines anyways, which Paradox even notes is bad though when pointing out that Wade did that. This then begs the question of how the timelines even work. If Logan was the anchor being in 10,005 and his death jump-started that universe dying, how was that universe surviving before he was born? Universes are already meant to naturally die out, and 10,005s would still take thousands of years, so why bother trying to save it if that's the natural course of things? How many universes are there if the TVA needs to assign goobers like Paradox to watch a singular one for centuries on end? Goodness, I really hate this timeline and time traveling shit. There's so much wrong with Deadpool and Wolverine that I genuinely believe EFAP wouldn't be able to unpack this in less than 10 hours, when utterly useless scenes like this exist.
Come on! I blew it. After all that, the only thing you're gonna remember is that god-awful dismount!
This isn't a movie meant to do anything more than be a product for you to consume. That may sound harsh, but let's be honest here. Once you peel away the fanfare of seeing Hugh Jackman and Reynolds on screen together, the overly recycled humor, and cameos of characters that most people couldn't care about, you have nothing of substance left. Well, save for Cavalrine. Deadpool and Wolverine is a film stitched together by skits that serves no larger narrative purpose, despite Disney's best efforts to try and get Deadpool and the X-Men into their MCU. Hugh Jackman may have delivered emotion when it asked, but it was for a character arc that had no emotional impact and stomped all over the pretty iconic send-off the character already had. If you're looking for a summer blockbuster, skip this and go see Twisters. That is a movie that actually knows what it is and gives audiences something more than member berries and a heartless desecration of several characters. Anyways, that's all I've got for you today. Thanks for stopping by and stay frosty, friends.